Tonight, Aaron Williams will be sharing with us. So I'm actually just going to read his bio to y'all so I don't say anything silly or wrong. Aaron is a worship leader, songwriter, and founder of The Way of Worship. Aaron is passionate about mentoring and developing young leaders and spends much of his time investing in and training emerging leaders and teams. Aaron frequently travels to lead worship for and teach at events, churches, and conferences on the topics of worship, songwriting, theology, and development. He is passionate about seeing spiritual awakening in this generation, whether it's investing in a small group of leaders in a living room setting or leading with a band in a large auditorium. Aaron's leadership is consistently thoughtful, creative, and Christ-centered. Aaron is a great friend of my husband and I's, and he truly is an amazing songwriter. If y'all have heard the song Abide, it's being played in many churches, and even for myself, it's truly spoken to me and has encouraged me. So just very grateful for him to get to be here with us tonight. And with that, I don't think I forgot anything, Anna. Let me make sure before okay, so I will pass it off to Aaron and we will have a time of him sharing. We'll do some Q&A and then we'll break into our groups. So Aaron, I'll pass it off to you.
Awesome. Well, wonderful to see you guys. You're all so prompt. I can't believe everyone was here exactly on time. That's amazing. Um, yeah, I just love getting to encourage songwriters. I've been writing songs for a long time. It's one of my favorite things in the world, and also one of the hardest things in the world that I've ever done. And I don't know if any of you feel that. It's like I have a love-hate relationship with how difficult the craft can be. And then you write a song and you feel like you finally got it right and it moves people and it's inspiring and it's just the best feeling ever. And then it usually immediately goes to dread for me because I'm not sure if I'll ever write another one again. I don't, maybe I'm the only one that feels that way. And so tonight I want to share about the inner life of the songwriter. I want to tell you guys a quick story. So my family moved here to Dallas. We live in Richardson, just north of the city, 2.5 years ago. And so we're kind of getting, that summer that we landed here, we're kind of getting acquainted with our new neighborhood and, everything is new. And we joined a neighborhood pool. And so my wife and my sons were going to the pool and I was out running errands. I don't remember what I was doing exactly. And I get this call and Mallory, my wife, is like, I'm in the middle of Coit and Campbell, which is one of the biggest intersections near us, and my car it won't work. And we're in our swimsuits because it's like a mile away from here. So they had just gone up the road to the swimming pool. They're coming home like a mile, and her car breaks down. And so I'm like, well, I can't get there. Call, we hardly know anyone. Call some friends. Some friends come and rescue them. We get the car towed to the shop. All this 2 days, they diagnosed the car. Could be the fuel pump. Could be this list of 4 or 5 things. We're going to try to figure it out. And the next morning, the guy calls me from the shop and he said, my head mechanic came in last night at the end of the day laughing hysterically because the car is just out of gas. And so there they were in the middle of the biggest intersection nearby. They're diagnosing all these problems with the car, and it was just empty, just didn't have any gas in it. And I tell that story kind of as an intro tonight because, I think in songwriting, so often we focus on all the externals, if you will. You can focus on rhyme schemes, you can focus on syllable count, melody contour, um, whatever, you name it, all the aspects of the craft. And then sometimes we ignore the most essential part of songwriting, which is you, the songwriter, the health of the songwriter. And so what I want to do is just draw our attention tonight to the reality that it's not just the craft of writing songs that produces great art and great work, but it is the quality of the person of which that art is coming out of. And maybe I should even say just the quality of your heart and soul, the quality of the things that you've been inputting into your heart and soul. And so I want to share a couple things just real quick, a couple ways to like diagnose maybe where you are, how you actually are, and then a couple of just a couple of tools to kind of think about, our inputs, so to speak. So I'm going to share my screen here, and I'm going to share just a little bit. There's going to be more on this slide than there is time for me to share. But as I've tried to figure out how to talk about this stuff, can you guys see that okay? I've tried to figure out how to talk about who we are as people, okay? All of us, this is from a biblical kind of viewpoint of the human being. All of us have a will. Your will is your intentions in life. So for this case, you're intending to become a better songwriter. Your mind are your thoughts, but also from a biblical perspective, it's your feelings, your values, your conscience. And then obviously your body, your physical body. This is how you carry out action into the world. And if we were to talk about the human soul, it would actually be drawing one more layer out here. The human soul is what encompasses all of this of who you are. And your soul, who you are at the soul level, is seeking harmony, connection, integration with yourself, with other people, with God. And so anything that's interfering with that is in some ways disintegrating who we are as people. And then there are things that we can do, soul keeping, if you will, that reintegrate us and they keep us healthy, and that's probably some of that list would be similar for all of us. And then some of that list will be very unique to each of us. For me, it's nature and the outdoors. Just spending time in quiet in a beautiful place is very integrating to my soul. Um, and there's things that, an overly chaotic or hectic schedule is disintegrating in some ways. We could go into whole lists of what that is, but the reason I share this with you is there's parts of songwriting. We could list some scenarios over here that threaten your ability to write great songs. For me, I'll just tell you what my list has been consistently. The list has been comparison. I, from a very young age, started comparing my writing to other people. And if I had more time, I could tell you this whole story where I actually quit songwriting for a season. Um, all of my best songs came on the other side of me quitting songwriting, where I had to deal with comparison issues. Um, this can also be trying to write about things that you're not really living or believing. It's like this half-hearted thing, like where you're trying to communicate something, but like at the end of the day, you're trying to write about something you haven't lived yet. I think that's a disintegrating thing. Envy, isolation, this is one of the beautiful things about doing this in community. Um, you might take some time later and just list what are the inner battles that you're going through as a creative person. Are you battling insecurity, or whatever it is? The main thing I want to say to you tonight is all of those pieces are actually really important to you becoming a healthy songwriter. And just as much as studying melody is important to you writing great melody, you you like handling in a healthy way these inner battles um, also has a lot to do with you being able to produce fruitful, good work in the world. And just for so long, no one ever told me that. And I was just like these weeds growing inside of me, kind of jeopardizing, honestly, everything that I was creating because I couldn't do it with a pure motive, and I couldn't do it without comparing to one another. And so the to summarize this section, or this little piece, there's really three things I want you to see over here. Um, you could have like a hardened soul, and so if you're trying to like diagnose, hardening of who we are happens. It's almost like a pathway, like how dirt, if you walk on dirt so much, it can just kind of harden the soil to where it's still dirt, but it's almost feels like concrete. For anyone who's gone through grief or trauma or wounding, or maybe just a prolonged season of darkness, there might be part of who you are that's just gotten hardened. And it's almost like it can't open up. And sometimes your best creative work is on the other side of actually softening that part of who you are and starting to write about whatever those things might be. You might say some of the most honest, relatable things in your songs if you can get to that place. The second would be just a shallow soul. Shallow soul, John Ortberg says, our souls become shallow when our interest or thoughts go no further than ourselves. So we as creatives can tend to be, maybe I think it's true, maybe a little bit self-focused. When we live there for too long, we forget that the work that we do is meant to serve other people. It's meant to connect with other people. And so anytime we become too self-focused, it kind of jeopardizes um, everything that we're doing. And for me, that's been insecurity and just getting out of my own head a little bit and focusing on the people that might hear the songs and how can I say this or write this in a way that serves them. And the third one is the cluttered soul, the hurried life. Um, this is when your inner life becomes as busy and crazy as your outer life. And I don't mean to assume that your outer life is crazy. It's just that I don't really know anyone who doesn't have a little bit, at least a decently busy schedule, you know? But it is possible to cultivate a quiet heart amidst a busy schedule. And so if you have a cluttered soul, probably what you feel like is when you sit down to write, you know that there's something deep down in there, but it's almost like you can't even catch your breath to like find it, you know? And so um maybe if that's you, you feel like you get writer's block a lot just because you can't access what's deeper inside of you. And so my encouragement would be, hey, why don't you consider taking some time, take 30 minutes just to ask yourself, is there any part of me that's hardened? Is there any part that's cluttered? Is there any part that's shallow? Um, and if there is, maybe step toward that and try to write what that might be, because you never know that again, that might be the most honest and helpful things that you start saying because we all deal with these things. None of us is immune to having hardened parts of our story. None of us is immune to being shallow or cluttered. Um, but these things will actually keep us from producing our best work if we're not careful, because you'll be trying to say something meaningful, but you just won't have anything meaningful to say. And for me, that's probably been the number one reason of writing songs that just don't connect deeply with people is I'm just not finding a meaningful enough thing to say to people. I'm just trying to finish a song. Can I get an amen? I'm just trying to finish a song from start to finish. But if you will search deeper for the thing that you really want to say, maybe you even need to say, that will connect deeply with people. But it's probably below the surface. For most of us, I think it's below the surface. Pat Pattison, who's a songwriting instructor at Berkeley, he talks about it's kind of like diving for pearls. Some of you are nodding your head. You probably read that same book. Where like when you dive down deep, you have to, I don't know what they call it, but it's basically acclimation for the pressure. And so he's like, you just have to dive deep all the time and you have to learn how to go to the very bottom to find the best stuff. And so I just want to encourage you with that. Now, give me 2 or 3 more minutes. So if that's like part of how we tend to our inner life is just by kind of diagnosing where are we and then tending to that. Um, the opposite of that is like cultivating the healthy aspect of it. And this is where I want to just ask you the question of like, what are your inputs? I'm leading a group of songwriters in a cohort right now, and one of the guys texted me yesterday, and he's like, "Bro, I'm just going to be honest. I'm just stuck. I feel like I don't have anything to say. My songs are just stuck." And I said, "Well, one, you're not alone. Everyone feels that way at times. But two, what are your inputs? Meaning, what are you reading? What are you listening to? What are you looking at, meditating on? And so I've created a couple real simple documents that I'm going to share again. I'd be happy to send this to you guys too if anyone finds it helpful. Um, whoops. And I just ask myself this question, it almost feels like accountability, but it's not really meant to be that so much, even though I guess it could be. What's entered my heart and soul this week through my eyes? What good and beautiful things have I been meditating upon? Um, what have I been watching on social media, computer, television? And then maybe the most helpful is like, where have I lingered? And the same thing for the ears, what have you been listening to? Whether it's a new artist that's inspiring to you, an audio book that's like really stretching your mind. Um, the point being, I think if you'll consider increasing the quality of your input, you will almost always find that you have stuff to say. You have stuff to write about. Um, the third one over here is just the mind and imagination. What's entered your heart and soul through your mind and imagination? Can you imagine if I've been dwelling on anxious thoughts, worry, things like that? What That's what's going to try to work itself out in my songs. What if I've been dreaming about inspiring kingdom ideas? Good and beautiful things. I'm gonna come back here. Uh, Good and beautiful things. Just to remind you, one of my favorite scriptures on this, Philippians 4:8. Finally, brothers and sisters, whatever is true, whatever is noble, whatever is right, whatever is pure, whatever is lovely, whatever is admirable, if anything is excellent and praiseworthy, think about such things. And so maybe the invitation is like, find inspiring artists and study their work. Um, and visual artists, find visual art and look at it. Listen to music and writers that are inspiring to you. Think about what you're allowing in, because just like the law of gravity, what goes up must come down. I do think there's a part of what goes in will come out. And so, especially if you're feeling stuck or just dry, it's like maybe stop writing a song and go find a book worth reading, you know? Maybe stop writing your song and go find an input that will feed the inner part of who you are. So then you'll have stuff to say. Um, that for me has been the number one thing. In fact, most of the songs that I've written that I feel like have really connected with people, um, have basically been summaries of long seasons of reading and studying on a particular topic. The song Emma talked about with Abide. Um, I just sat on that topic for a long, long time. I tried to write two other Abide songs and they were terrible. And then eventually all of it came out in the right version. I wrote a song recently that's unreleased called Hallowed Be Your Name, and it came just through a study on the Lord's Prayer. And that word, hallowed in particular, just stuck out to me. So I was like, I'm going to dive in. I'm going to research. All I'm doing there is I'm inputting good material. Um, so, yeah. So, in summary, don't forget that one of the most important aspects of writing great songs is caring for the songwriter yourself. Um, Use the tools to diagnose where you're at and be honest with yourself, and maybe even try to write from that place. And then, third, increase the quality of your inputs. Think about things that are noble, beautiful, trustworthy, and true. Decrease anything that's harmful, destructive, not good. Um, and I think those things will help. So I feel like I just fire hydrant with you guys to stay on task. Let me pause there. Any questions? Feel free. Not everyone at once.
Hey, Aaron, this is Lewis. Maybe
Hey,
let's.
Lewis.
Hi, good to see you again.
Good to see you
So,
too.
just you talk. It sounds as if when you're writing, a lot of your approach is coming lyric first. Would that be accurate, or do you also go off and spend any time with just sort of musical experimentation and see what comes out of music first sort of thing? I find
Yeah,
myself doing both. So.
yeah. Um, yeah, I do tend to be a little bit of a lyric first writer, but I would say um, I- when I have ideas that start music first, I think that's a wonderful place of inspiration. It's almost like I'm looking for the spark anywhere. It can be lyric, melody, um, just a cool chord progression that's vibey, whatever it might be, anything that sparks. But I do feel like there's an appropriate spot to stop in any start and ask the question, now what am I trying to say? Because the art of songwriting is really saying what you mean. And it's surprisingly difficult to say what you actually are trying to say. And most of our songs get off when we're trying to say something and we say something kind of like what we're trying to say. You guys ever felt that? It's a great question to ask yourself. What am I actually trying to say here? And I'll ask myself that question so often and I'll go back and read my lyric and I'm like, yeah, I'm kind of saying that. So I think no matter where the idea starts, just having a spot where you stop and say, okay, what is this song about now? Getting laser focused about that. Um, very few songs that have bad ideas end up being great songs. So that's back to the thing. You really have to have a great idea to write a great song. And that's where it's like it's worth digging to find the nugget that's worth writing about instead of I've wasted a lot of time writing on mediocre ideas that turned into mediocre songs that were good for the practice of it, but they never connected with anyone, you know. Is that helpful to your question, Lewis? Okay.
So, Aaron, my name is Christy. And have you ever, like, this happens to me where you have this great idea and you start writing your song, and all of a sudden it like goes that way, and
Oh yeah.
it and it ends up being like a song that you'd had no idea you were going to write about that, and it just went that way.
Yep. Oh yeah, for sure. You know, a friend of mine always encourages me. He's like, sometimes you sit down to write your idea and like how I think what he would say about that is there was really another idea that was trying to find its way out that almost needed your initial idea to just open the door for it. And so I try to go where the inspiration is. Sometimes it's great to keep both ideas and eventually come back and write both songs. But if the thing that's inside of you just ends up coming out, you know, that can tend to be where the best material is in my experience. So like being willing to follow it and not, unless you just really love what you're doing, then stay on it. But if there's inspiration there, I'll follow it more times than not. If you do that too many times and end up with no songs, though, maybe don't follow it next time.
Hey, Aaron.
Hey,
Um, I had a question of how do you know when a song is just for you to like practice, or maybe it's something you and the Lord are working on versus when to share it with others?
that's a great question. It's in my experience, that's an int
Yeah.
yeah, it's like an intuitive gut thing that I do think intuition can be sharpened. Um, I have talked myself into some really bad songs that I wrote in my mind. I thought I had talked myself into them being great. Anyone else? I've also talked myself out of some of my best songs being good songs. Um, and the song Abide, I held on to in my back pocket for a year because it was written in a very intimate kind of personal situation. and I thought, this is just Aaron's prayer song. It's not corporate, it's not for other people. And a friend asked me to play it in a song share, and the whole room kind of just latched onto the song immediately. And by the end, there was kind of a special thing that happened, and I was like, what was that? And in that moment, it was my intuition was being sharpened, because what I thought was just a prayer song for me, I quickly like understood, okay, this is not just for me. So I think you can sharpen your intuition. I think ask your friends, ask trusted community, because oftentimes they can see it in a totally different light than you can. And if you think it's a it's for sharing, like if it's a corporate worship song or something, it's always, if you have the outlet to share it in smaller groups before it's like a Sunday morning thing, that can just be really helpful, you know, especially if you're a part of a bigger church. It's like, share it with your small group or with, a Bible study group or something like that, to kind of get a feel for it first.
Okay, I'm gonna jump in here. I know we could just keep asking so many questions. Aaron, thank you so much for sharing with us and being here tonight. Give a
You're
little
welcome.
round of applause. Thank you.